expert by any means at all, but this is just from what I've read and from how I understand it. Hollow tip bullets are meant to, as soon as they hit their target, they like mushroom out. And so they're meant to stick inside whatever they hit, so that they're not supposed to produce exit wounds at all. That's the entire point of having hollow tip bullets. And so somehow he managed to get out 5 shots, 4 of them hitting John. 3 of those bullets produced exit wounds, and the bullets were found in his jacket. 1 remained lodged inside of John, and then 1 went over his head and hit a glass pane window, which again is another strange thing, because that was the window that they hit was on the far right side of the Dakota building, and Mark David Chapman was standing. I mean, the bullets would have had to made a hard right turn to produce bullet holes in this glass. But anyhow, so we have the 3 bullets that were recovered in Lennon's jacket that evening, 1 that would remain lodged in him, and then there's 3 bullet holes in the pane glass lobby window. So to me, that seems like that's way more than 5 bullets if you count them up. So you have 3 in his jacket, okay, 1 that remains in him, that's 4, and then 3 holes in the glass. And there's if you go to my blog, I have an article on there, the way things are going, and there's a big picture that they took, and it's very clear there's absolutely 3 bullet holes in that glass. So it's kind of difficult to argue that only 5 shots were shot, no matter how you look at it. And that right there, just that one point, is like obvious to me that something else happened than what we have been led to believe this entire time, because the math just doesn't add up there.
And so few journalists or investigators seem to have looked into this in 40 years. Here we are talking about it now.
I've never once heard that questioned, and it's like, that's just so strange to me. They talk about the JFK assassination all the time, and the magic bullets and all of that stuff, and all of that stuff's talked about. But this particular case with John Lennon is like, it's hushed. Like, nobody talks about it. And it's the strangest thing to me, because there's so many glaring discrepancies about everything.
It's like you say, there's an official narrative that's decided upon, and it's just trotted out decade after decade.
The thing is, even the official narrative goes a bit wonky. I mean, I've looked into the shooting, the actual nuts and bolts of it, if you like, what happened on the night, or what's said to have happened on the night. And I've got all the bits of paper here from the various websites and news sources, and I've printed all the sources up onto bits of paper, and I've got them all strewn across here in front of me. And you've got differing reports. I mean, for example, June 22nd, 1981, and I've got part of the transcript here from the competency hearing that Mark David Chapman took. Basically, I think this is one of the hearings where they were trying to find out if he was going to plead guilty or not guilty. I'm not sure if it was this particular hearing, but it was one of these kind of hearings where they're checking Mark David Chapman's statement. He's standing in court and he's giving them his version of accounts. And the judge says to him, "How many times did you shoot the gun?" And he said, 5 shots. And how many times did you strike the victim? And Chapman says 4. Right, fair enough. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then in an interview with Larry King in 1999, I think this was, one of the very few interviews that Mark David Chapman has ever done, one of the very few media interviews he's ever given. And again, just to point out, if he wanted to be famous, how come is it he's only done about 5 or 6 media interviews in 40 years?
Right.
Anyway.
And the first one was like 20 years later.
Yeah, something like, I think it was 7-8 years afterwards for a magazine article, I think.
Oh, right.
At ID Mobile, we don't waste our money on celebrity voiceovers. Why not? I'm a great guy. Noom, ero, uno. It's proven by science. Instead, we put our money into giving customers great service, better prices, and fantastic Christmas offers. Like a gift card worth up to £100 on selected handset and SIM-only plans. That's a great deal. Really great deal. That's why ID Mobile is a Which recommended mobile provider. Switch and save today at idmobile.co.uk.
Okay.
I think so. I'm not sure. But this one with Larry King was 1999. And in that, he says he fired 5 shots. Okay, 5 shots, not 4, 5 shots into his back. And there's also witness statements that were taken on the day and various other statements that were taken literally minutes and hours after the incident occurred. I've got a news report, a UPI and AP news report here. And this was, I'm assuming, given I'm reading it here and assuming by the style that it's written, that this is literally minutes, maybe an hour after or a couple of hours after it happened. And a spokesman says here that Lennon was shot 3 times. Okay, so we got 3 times there. Just turning the pages here on all these bits of paper I've got, and then we've got a witness by the name of Sean Strube. Now, he's one of the few witnesses that was there at the time, or so we're told was there. He didn't actually see anything. Okay, he didn't actually see anything. He says that by the time he got to actually see anything, it was when John Lennon was being taken into the back of the police car to be taken to the hospital, to be taken to Roosevelt Hospital, because apparently the police thought that John Lennon was in such a bad way that they couldn't wait. So they thought the best thing was to just get him into the back of the police car, not wait for the ambulance to arrive, and just get him straight to the hospital, get him in the. So that's what he saw. He saw Lennon going into the back of the car. Now he says that, and again I'm quoting here, this is his quote. He says, "Some people told of hearing 6 shots." So we've got 6 shots there. And then there's an unidentified female witness who spoke to a TV reporter, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. So again, this is just maybe presumably, minutes, hours, after the event occurred. And she didn't actually see much either. But what she says is, all of a sudden, I heard 5 or 6 shots. So again, it's this 6 shots, 5 shots, 3 shots. I don't know what's going on there. I mean, the thing is that if forgive me if I've got this wrong, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But from what I understand, John Lennon was hit in the left. All the bullets hit the left, the shoulder, and Mark David Chapman was said to have been standing on the right. Okay, isn't that right? Yeah, he was standing on the right. Yep. In fact, there is a diagram, and I think it's on your website, Desiree, isn't it? On one of your articles.
It is.
You've got an article or a diagram that was actually in the New York Times in an article, in a news report, the day after the shooting. And it's a diagram of how the shooting occurred. So you've got the limo where John Lennon came out of at the sidewalk, and then it's got this kind of diagram that shows the direction he walked in, and it's got Chapman on the right, and him shooting and hitting Lennon in his back in the left.
It's those Kennedy magic bullets again.
Inside his body. So Chapman's on the right. Exactly. Is that possible? Can you do that? Is that possible? I'm not, like you say, Desiree, I'm not an expert with trajectories and so on. But can you stand on the right and shoot and hit someone in the left in their back? Can you do that in their shoulder area? Is that possible?
It's probably possible. Like I said, it would be. I would think it would be very difficult. It almost seems like he would be like a professional, being able to make those kinds of a shot. Not just some amateur that was, doing this for fame, but yeah. So John and Yoko passed Chapman on his left. So Chapman was standing on the very right hand side of that doorway. John and Yoko go by him on the left, and supposedly as soon as John passes, Chapman got into his combat position and fired. Some say he says Mr. Lennon, to where John started to turn around. Yeah. And others said that didn't actually happen. But again, there's only a couple witnesses. Who knows?
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is the weird thing. Where are all these statements actually coming from? Because from what I can gather, Chapman never said he went into a combat stance. This is something that came out in various articles and books and what have you. But from what I understand, from having looked at what Mark David Chapman has said about all of this, from what he says took place, he never went into a combat stance, and he didn't say, because there is this narrative that as soon as John Lennon walked past him, he said, "Mr. Lennon." and John Lennon looked at him, turned round and looked at him.
Right.
Mark David Chapman has never said that happened. He just said he shot his back.
What do we know about Yoko's behaviours? What's Yoko said about all this? Because she was a witness.
Not much from what I can understand.
Not a whole lot, no?
Right.
No,
So Yoko was in front. Yoko walked out of the limo first, and she was about 20 steps or so in front of John. And so she was like kind of already in the safeguard of the building as this was happening. So she would have, I mean, at least if that's truly what happened, her back would have been completely turned to all this.
She would have heard the shots and then turned.
She would have heard the shots, but not seen what had happened, transpired before that.
The thing is, if John Lennon had have turned, as one researcher I've noticed has picked up on, and good call on that researcher for picking it up. But if it's true that, if it's true, who knows? But if it's true that that Mark David Chapman did say Mr. Lennon, and John Lennon turned around, then how is it if he's standing on his right and John Lennon turns around? How could he have hit him in the back on the left?
He couldn't have. When he would have been in the chest, right? Because he would have turned, and then he would have been hit in the chest rather than in the back.
Right.
So yeah, very strange.
Very strange. And then you've, I was going to say you've got this Dr. Halloran. I think his name was Dr. David Halloran, who was the main doctor at the emergency room at the Roosevelt Hospital when John Lennon was brought in, and when they did the emergency resuscitation. And he has said, and this is on video, it's on YouTube, you can find it if you look for Dr. Halloran. He says, check this. He had 4 shots over the front of his chest, 3 exit wounds at the back.
Mm-hmm.
What? But I thought he was shot in the back. And William Joseph Gamble, okay, another name I've picked up. He was a New York. He's now he became a New York City detective, but he was one of the officers who responded on the night of the shooting, and he has said he was shot in the chest. John Lennon was shot in the chest. That was his statement.
So we can spot all these discrepancies 40 years later, but apparently nobody at the time could.
Yeah.
Right. Or nobody talks about it, or
covering
something.
it up.
Right.
Or someone's covering it up. There must have been another shooter there, whether it was Perdomo or not, because you've got the statement of Peter Cullen, a guy by the name of Peter Cullen. He was a patrolman for New York 20th Precinct, and I think he was the first or one of the first to turn up on the scene. He got the call and he turned up there, and everything was pretty fresh when he turned up there. So he turned up there with a gun in his hand, ready for anything. You know, it was still fresh. Everything was still going on. And apparently his first thought when he got there was that it was the handyman who was the shooter. And it was only when the doorman said that it was Chapman that Chapman was then approached. And according to Cullen, he couldn't believe it. It was like his instincts had been insulted, because his police instincts was to look towards the handyman. But he didn't.
And he also said that there were 3 men there that he didn't recognize, too. And from all of the other accounts, there wouldn't have been 3 men that he didn't recognize there. So, I mean, and that's separate from Perdomo, the doorman, because he said he saw Perdomo there, and Perdomo had informed him that, yes, Mark David Chapman was the shooter, and that he had just shot John Lennon. And so he had said there was other people there. But who were all these other people?
The people, and so again, this brings us back to Perdomo. I'm not 100% convinced that Perdomo was the man. I think this might be one of those little red herrings that's been thrown in. I mean, we can go back to that if you want, 'cause as I say, this is a huge subject, and there's so much to remember about what we should turn back to and talk about again. We're going all over the place here, and there's so much to remember. But I mean, the thing about Perdomo is, why didn't Perdomo? The story is that Perdomo said to Chapman after he shot Lennon, "Do you know what you just did?" Right. And they took the gun away from him, and I think it was the handyman actually, the elevator operator. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. It's a guy by the name of Joseph Meny, who was the Dakota elevator operator. He was asked by Perdomo to take, because what Chapman did was he shot Lennon and then he dropped the gun